Howdy, lieutenants and economists.
The most volatile, evil, disgusting things on the planet, humans. If you have a video request, you can always go to assholeconsulting.com.
Yeah, I am gonna charge you, kids. And that is the importance of not fucking up.
You are such an asshole!
Assholeconsulting.com. I actually have like a serious request. I actually had to do some research and thinking and organizing and everything. I actually have to economics today. And the reason I printed it off is because the power is out here in the Twin Cities. Hi Aaron, hope you are doing well. I'm interested in getting your views on how you see the next major downturn playing out. I know no one who is honest could say it will happen, since the market could stay irrational, then you could stay solvent. But that said, I know you well enough. I know you knew well enough to write a book on the last crash, so I'm sure you've at least thought about the subject regarding the next one. To be more specific, I wanted to get your thoughts on where you think it will come from, whether it's a specific country, industry, asset class. Is there anything from the last crash that will contribute to it? Not really. Most of the markets that were inflated and had an oversupply of housing, they're still digesting it. Like Phoenix and Vegas prices are still somewhat depressed based on price to earnings ratios across the nations. But fucking California is back to where it was. I know the Twin Cities is kind of back to where it was. So that, I think the United States is finally, after almost a decade, digested that lousy piece of Chinese food. How will authorities react? They will print off more money. That's what they'll print off more money, and they'll borrow more debt. And every major country will do the old quantitative easing forever. I'm not really, I don't know how effective interest rate policy is. I know it creates bubbles, but they will just print off money, and you people in the world will swallow it whole. You will do it. So that's how the authorities will react. In the same way as before, like lowering interest rates and buying toxic, they'll buy toxic assets. That's what they'll do. The Federal Reserve just print off more money. They'll wash it out in the private markets, and then they'll end up getting a balance sheet that looks crappier and crappier. So, and I still to this day predict that you will see student loans on the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. But on a larger scale, Bank of England, Bank of China, they'll play the Jesus Christ of toxic assets, so they can take away the sins of the world. And then banker scum and idiot investors. Don't just think it's banker scum. Realize if banks didn't have rubes and yokels and sheep to sign on the dotted line, they wouldn't have had these bubbles in the first place. Rates are already so low, and in some countries they're negative, like Japan, so there isn't much wiggle room. Right, it's going to be buying it out. And they can do negative interest rates if they want. So what else could they possibly do? What will be the political and social ramifications be given the divisiveness we see not just in the United States but the rest of the world? This hasn't exactly been a stellar recovery, and given that most Americans and people around the world live paycheck to paycheck, I doubt the vast majority of people could take a crash even close to that of a dot-com bubble. Don't confuse government debt with private debt. I'd have to look up the figures again, but last I checked, which wasn't that long ago, personal debt to GDP, household debt. Well, you know what? Let's just look it up. We can look up household debt to GDP. What the fuck? It's going to be a long one anyway. Oh, no, we can't, because the fucking... Hang on, let me take a look. Electricity's out. The internet's out. Hang on. People's personal finances are not that bad. I know you throw in. Hang on, let's look up. Thank you, everybody. Household debt to GDP. Debt to GDP. Let's take a look here. Household debt. Yeah, it's gone down. It's 2016, yeah, it's gone down from the peak. So people's personal finance, but still, they're not as leveraged as they were at the peak of the first housing bubble. But they're still not in great shape. I mean, in Poor Richard's retirement, I was doing the research. Oh yeah, I mean, you guys all read the article about how half the population, 62% don't even have $2,000 in their savings account. So they're not going to be able to handle another one, but they'll all just go back to the government. The government will print off more money, and it'll just be a wealth transfer from the productive to the parasitic and the stupid. That's how it is. It's almost, you can just assume damn well near 2/3 of the population they are living paycheck to paycheck or very close to it. So whether it was 2007, 2008, today, or 1998, 1999, especially Americans, but Westerners in general, they have no rainy day fund. So political and social ramifications, given the divisiveness we see. Well, I don't know if it's divisive. I think, politically between Democrats and Republicans, but when it comes to a stock market or a housing bubble or a dot-com bubble bursting, I think politics really doesn't have anything to do with it. People just get their government bailouts. Bankers get bailed out. Investment bankers get bailed out. And that, even though the Democrats will claim that's their side and that's divisive, oh, you're bailing out the evil Republicans. I don't know if you noticed this last election. It wasn't Trump getting all the Wall Street money. And Republicans and conservatives and libertarians do not like bailing out banker scum. So that's more of an economic issue than political. Regarding my question about the social and political ramifications, I'm especially interested in giving people's reaction to Trump winning the election, regardless of anyone's opinion of it. But from what I saw, people were very distressed to see that outcome. Yeah, keep in mind, a lot of people did not have a financial interest. Some people did, but all these people crying when Trump got elected, it's more psychological and emotional. Especially younger people, they just got nothing else in their lives except politics. And that's the way they've been conditioned. Oh my God, you're green and you're organic and you believe in 33 flavors of gender and you just care and you care about the children and you're open-minded and you are aware you have white privilege. That's it. That's all they got. So when their political king or queen in this case did not get elected, it's more like Jesus didn't come down. Like, oh, it's forecasted Jesus is coming back in 2015 and he didn't come back. Like, you'd be very sad and depressed because it means your entire life and worldview is wrong. Or at least you wasted a lot of hope and effort and that maybe things aren't going to go your way. But I'm just going through it and I have my thoughts more organized. Reading my question about the social and political ramifications, I'm especially interested in giving people's reactions to Trump winning the election, regardless of anyone's opinion of it. From what I saw, people were very distressed to see that outcome. I wonder what would happen if anything close to the crash of 2008 were to occur, where those same people's livelihood would be threatened. They're going to blame... Look, did you remember George Bush? Let's go back a while even before the housing crash. The dot-com crash started in 1999, was it? And George Bush was inaugurated in 2001. And the crash happened, but GDP did not start to contract. And about the same time, like where Trump is now, George Bush gets inaugurated, he gets his 100 days in, and the economy is starting to slow down. So George Bush did inherit a recession from Bill Clinton. Obama inherited a recession from George Bush. And I'm not even blaming politicians. This is just one guy. It's the president. And he can make policies to make it worse or better. But I have a hard time blaming the actions of 320 million dipshit Americans on the president. When it's like, no assholes, you guys overinvested in dot-coms. And no assholes, you guys signed on the dotted line for your third arm finance ninja loan housing bubble over in fucking California. Oh, it's George Bush's fault. So this is not the housing bubble crash. Before that, there was a recession. I don't know if you remember where they were saying, this is the worst economy in 50 years. That was John Kerry when he was trying to run up against George Bush. Or maybe it was 2004. Well, it wasn't a recession. Nothing compared to what we had in 2007, 2008, 2009. It was a minor slide. It wasn't even a technical recession because you need 2 quarters of contracting GDP in a row. We didn't have that. It went down a little bit. We're talking not even 1%, like a fraction. You can look it up. Down, then it went up a little bit, then it went down below 0, then it went up, and then it growed, and then we had the housing boom and the housing economy. But they're blaming, and George Bush is evil, and George Bush is going to send us to Iraq. George Bush, they will always blame a scapegoat, Republican or Democrat. So they are going to blame Trump. Trump is not. Look at what happened. Look at what before he even got elected. He's a Nazi. He hates women. I mean, everything. You think George Bush was the boogeyman and the scapegoat of the left? Wait till Donald Trump. I mean, these people just hate him, and there's no common sense or empiricism or reasons why it's all emotional, it's all religious, it's all zealotry, because he's just not the leftist guy, because their queen didn't get elected. It's not about time, I guess, ladies, and and the media certainly helped fan the flames. Jesus, did you know Donald Trump said some naughty things? Like, every guy always does. Like how they try to make locker room. Wasn't it cute how they tried to make locker room talk like bad, like it's really bad. Oh my God, you should never do that. It's like, dude, that's been going on forever and it's going to continue forever, whether you people like it or not. So they're going to blame Trump for everything. And I mean, everything. I thought they were going to blame George Bush for everything. Like, when Obama took over, they kept blaming Bush. It's like, dude, he's been out of office for 5 years. Obama's in his second term. What, Well, it's George Bush. It's George Bush. So they'll go and they'll blame Trump. And another reason, that's politicians, but individuals, they don't want to admit that they're wrong. Really, you think some dipshit young person's going to say, oh yeah, I majored in journalism and I got my master's in creative writing and I went into a ton of debt and it was pretty stupid. But that's not Trump's fault. No, they're going to blame Trump for and I had kids out of wedlock and then I screwed the wrong guy. He changed on me. He just changed. And, I think it's the reason I don't make any money is because Trump is racist or sexist. That is literally what's going to, anything to avoid taking responsibility. Anything to admit that you done fucked up. Okay. One of those people livelihood. All right, so let's get back to your thing. Okay, how is the market going to crash? And let me go. I got a ton of notes here. I just want to give you an overview of that. So, all right, let's explain how markets crash. You are right that I can't know. Nobody knows that any economist or finance guy worth his or her salt is going to say there's no way to know. There's no way to know which snowflake is going to cause the avalanche. There's no way to know, which cigarette butt is going to blow up the Mexican fireworks factory. You just don't know. So it's impossible to tell. What you can tell, though, is there the potential energy, the fuel, the overvaluation by which a collapse can occur. And so when markets crash, I just can't. I mean, I got some ideas and I've listed them here, but just so you know, I have no idea which one of these scenarios is going to play out. And it could be a completely, like Trump, it could be coming out of left field. North Korea actually develops an ICBM that can hit New York and Los Angeles. And then all this economic discussion is actually secondary and quite moot. But the way markets crash, it's not so much that they should. Like markets can remain irrational. Lenders can remain irrational longer than you can stay solvent. It's what is that spark that blows up all that fuel? What is that snowflake that causes the avalanche? Like, for example, even though it didn't have an effect on the economy, the 1987 stock market crash, that was disproportionately caused by, back in the day, what was very advanced, but today crude and rudimentary computer programming. So the market went a little bit out of the Bollinger Bands or the statistical band it was supposed to trade in. That triggered computer programming, which sold more, which even exacerbated the problem more. So there's a spark that caused a crash, but the markets weren't necessarily that overvalued. So no one knows what it's going to be. No one knows, all right? And as long as you know that, then you can go ahead and kind of understand, okay, well, Clary is only mortal. He can only figure out certain stuff, and there's certain areas coming through. But in general, though, I do not see any crashes. That doesn't mean I don't see bubbles. Oh, there's bubbles all over the place. If there was any sanity, the stock market would crash by 50% tomorrow. Housing prices would come down maybe by about 25%. But the reason I don't see any bubbles on the horizons and severe crashes are about to occur. I see just a general slowdown, and the reason why is that we have the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency, and I don't see any contenders they're going to replace. Now, how does this work? Okay. The bubble has been caused, not just in the United States, but Western world globally, by various central banks printing off their money supplies, quantitative easing all over the place. European Central Bank, Bank of England, Bank of China, Bank of Japan, United States. So they're all doing the same thing. We're going to have very low interest rates, and we're going to print off a shit ton of money. Now, because of a lack of faith and hope in the future, there's not been a lot of investment going on. So you got all these dollars floating around. And you would say, well, that would normally cause inflation, but it hasn't, in part because of the money not going into consumer goods. I think the financial crisis has left a sting in people's mouths where they're not consuming and buying. The velocity of money, if you want to get into that. In other words, people don't get it done and then they go spend too. They're a little bit more reluctant to do that, thus why household debt to GDP has been going down. But also because a lot of our production is shipped overseas to dirt cheap places like China. Companies are efficient, not only in labor, but there's also an element of roboticization and automation that is keeping prices of consumer goods down. Right? So, a gallon of milk is not that expensive. Bakken oil field, there's another perfect example of companies are smart. They're good. They figured a way to get oil cheaper than the Saudis were trying to ass rape us for. Oil stays down. So there are advances in technology, hustle, entrepreneurship, cleverness, human guile that is keeping textiles down, clothing down, all of our daily consumables down. The money's got to go somewhere, though. Where does it go? Well, ask, what do we borrow for? And then you'll see where the inflation is. Inflation you have in housing. Housing prices are back up to where they were as a price to earnings, price to rents ratio. They're even higher nominally, but housing has been reinflated. Education, all you dipshit millennials borrowing $150,000 to go get a degree in jerk-off studies, what the fuck it is you morons are studying nowadays. So tuition is up. Healthcare is up, even though that's not really an asset. It is government spending goes into healthcare, and you're like, oh, we need to spend more on healthcare. And then you're like, why is healthcare so expensive? Because you guys don't understand inflation. And then the stock market and other investable assets have also gone up. As you said, stock market's back up to a PE of, I'd have to look at Robert Shiller's, but a PE of 26, 27, 28, 29, somewhere in there just below 30. So twice the historical value. So that is where the bubble has come from. Now, there is the potential for all that to crash, but I don't see it crashing simply because the debt situation of most of the Western world is going to require that we keep printing off more and more money and have low interest rates. This is just going to ensure that the market is flat. In other words, the markets are no longer rational. They're not looking at what's an earnings or what's a dividend and is that worth me. Dividend yields are 2% right now on the S&P 500. That means you got to wait. If dividends don't grow, you got to wait 50 years to break even. It's a joke. It's laughable. Price to rents ratios are getting a little bit high in different markets. There certainly is a bubble, but that's not what's driving it anymore. This is just rank inflation. Printing off money, low interest rates, a classic Austrian bubble is occurring. But I think it's a permanent one. I'm thinking, don't quote me on this though, because it can crash. Once we lose faith in the system, it can crash. But this is kind of the new normal now, because I don't see us solving our debt problems anymore, United States or other places. So you're going to have a continuation of the printing presses. You're going to have a continuation of quantitative easing. You're going to have a continuation of low interest rates. And the money, because of other factors, advances in technology, economics, we're going to have your consumables stay low. So the money will continue to flow into assets, right? Or there's at least going to be a support for asset prices. A kind of a different way to look at this is the Venezuelan and Zimbabwean stock markets have performed spectacularly well nominally. I know adjusted for real inflation they haven't, but just hear me out on this. even though they've had hyperinflation in their economies, their asset prices have gone up. Why? Because they're assets, meaning they have value. That is where all the future production and profits come from. So the stock market, anytime there's going to be more printing off of money, that money is going to flood into asset classes or where we decide to borrow it for housing, education, healthcare. But these asset prices are going to continue on, and therefore there's at least going to be a printing press support for these various asset classes, housing, whatever else. In other words, I don't see there's going to be a crash. There might be, and we kind of saw this too. Look at the crash we had in 2008. Oh man, we lost half the value. Well, now it's back up. It's more, I think it's almost 2.5 times back up. I got news for you. Corporate profits did not grow 250%, but for some reason stock market did. That's because we just printed off more money. Money was flooded into the market. So you might see a stock market crash, and there could be some slowing economic growth with it, but I think those two have been decoupled now. Any market, financial market, asset market, is being driven by simple supply and demand of how many US dollars or yen or won or euros that are being printed off. So I just see a slowdown. I think the asset bubbles are completely removed now from the underlying productive capacity of the economy, from GDP, from employment, from industrial production. It can maybe have an effect, but I don't see it. Also, I know this sounds hopeful and optimistic, but we did learn from the last crash, or at least the Feds did. Because when I was working in banking, the Feds were so far up these bankers' asses to make sure that they didn't fuck up. And they should have been. The bankers were, oh, we don't like regular. Fuck you. You guys brought it on yourself. You guys are fucking dipshits. But it is different this time in at least one capacity. I know that's going to be a harbinger of things to come. But when you look at not the stock market, but the real estate market, prices are high. Price of rents are very high. But the inventory is nowhere near the glut that it was beforehand in 2007. So that is definitely there. The inventory is tight. I think last I checked in the Twin Cities, it's under 2 months. That's really tight. Also, the loan quality is better. Beforehand, you could get a loan. Anyone would get a loan. The percent, I had to look at the charts again, but you're not. The majority of the mortgages being issued to buy houses were not 30-year fixed. They are ARMs, ninjas, and they were secondary homes. Everything was leveraged. They threw out all. What was it? I think you could get loan to value of like 105, over 100%. The housing's going to go up, just to show you how stupid the bankers were. So that is not the case now. Now the majority of houses out there, real estate is being bought by 30-year fixed. There's some commercial mixed in there, but it's nowhere near what it was like back in 2005. Doesn't mean the stock market can't, or the housing market can't crash. I'm just saying that there are things, structural things, regulatory things in position now that it could still go down, but I don't see a crash like we did in 2008, 2009, because it's just not the fuel for it. There's just not the glut of inventory. You might see a stagnation, maybe a slow decline, but not an actual crash. Regardless, the larger point being that because of monetary policy across the world, asset prices are quickly becoming less and less pertinent to economic growth. And they are definitely being decoupled from it. So, okay. So anyway, the overall environment that I'm trying to paint here is that I don't see a red-hot sector like a dot-com, housing bubble circa 2006, or a stock market bubble like we had in 2006. I don't see that. Everything is bubbly, but it's inflation driven, and so I think the economy is going to be determined more by the people and the global people, citizens of the world, and frankly, it's just going to be a slow decay. It's going to be like Europe. They're just going to kind of decay like France. We're all inevitably going to start to look like Brazil, kind of a really shitty country that, it's not a war-torn African country or where Muslims are blowing people up all the time, but it ain't fucking anything to applaud. it's Brazil. It's a shitty country. And I think that's kind of wherever we're going to go to this general decay, the slow deterioration into blah poo. Nothing exciting. And we've already seen it. You kind of already see economic growth if you do a rolling 20, rolling 10-year average. We're excited when we're above 2%. I remember the days in Reagan when we get above 6. You're like, there was actually a booming economy after a collapse. And so just this malaise, this lack of excellence, this human psychology to be socialist in a cultural Marxist sense. Not necessarily economic, not finances, but just everyone owes me a living because I'm alive, not I'm going to earn it, I'm going to achieve excellence. It's just the people are shit. And ultimately the people determine the economic growth and the success of a nation. And the quality of, especially Westerners, is just going to pot. So it's just going to be this, it's going to be a slow, inexorable decline. All right, so different scenarios in which a collapse might happen. And keep in mind, they could all, these are all, some elements of these are all happening. It may lead to a decline, but I really don't see a crash happening. There are going to be slowdowns, but not crashes, all right? First one, sector, area, industry that I think something might happen. Asset prices inflated beyond affordability. All right. We talked about the following: housing, education, healthcare, and the investable assets, stock markets. All right. Yes, people are excited about low interest rates. Oh, look at how much house we can afford. But inevitably, prices for everything that you borrow is going to go up to the point that it's unaffordable. Education has become that way a lot. Housing is going to become that pretty soon if it keeps going up, although it has tapered off a bit, so that's good. Healthcare, how many of you can keep affording healthcare if it goes up 25% a year? And then the stock market, no one really thinks about the stock market because we keep splitting stocks to keep the price down. But in terms of price to earnings or dividend yield, for the most part, nobody younger than a baby boomer can really, quote, afford the stock market. So this is going to be hard to start a business and make a profitable business. Like example that I like to use is when I go to different bars or nightclubs, and not nightclubs, restaurants, the food is very affordable at places that have been around a long time. Well, that's because they've paid off their fucking mortgage. So the shot of Rumplemints is only $4 and the steak is only $10. You go to some new hippity-hoppity joint headed up by some dipshit that graduated from Le Cordon Bleu. It's $30 steaks, $15 martinis, and it's like, well, that plate, because they got to charge that much because they bought a property or they bought a lease at a very high price. So businesses become less profitable, harder to start up, harder to make a good go at it. Affordable housing becomes difficult, either to buy it or to rent, because landlords got to charge rent to cover their mortgage. Education becomes more expensive, and therefore to train and get yourself to the point that you can have a high-paying job. It's one thing where it's like, boy, it takes a lot to get a high-paying job. Like, look how much school I need to go get to get a high-paying job. It's more like it's making getting a high-paying job no longer high-paying. It's not high-paying. If you got to pay $200,000, you get master's preferred, all you fucking HR bitches out there. Oh, you need your MBA. Fuck you. The fuck I do. All of a sudden, an MBA is $150,000. Well, now it's no longer worth the wage you're paying. If you're going to make people pay that much up front just to get the qualifications in the paper. So, again, this is not happening today or tomorrow. It's not like tuition jumped up 1,000%. It took decades for that to happen. So this will be a slowdown, but not a crash. All right. If you're going to make it hard to be economically productive, start businesses, employ people, get training just to get a job because we're flooding these industries with dollars and it drives up the price, well then fewer and fewer people are going to be able to afford it, including the poor, by the way. This is one of those things that actually hurts the poor. Then you're going to just have slower and slower economic growth. And hello, Brazil, here we come. We'll be the northern Brazil. All right. Second thing that I see, developing world gives a rise to challenge the U.S. dollar in terms of the world's reserve currency. This may happen in our lifetimes. I don't think it's going to happen in our lifetimes, but we could pick on them all we'd like. But Mexico, China, Russia, these countries may be corrupt as hell, but they are growing. They're growing very fast, and they have better fundamentals, economic fundamentals, than the U.S. The only thing they really have as a drawback is that they're corrupt. And if you want to keep the world's reserve currency, you need to be relatively uncorrupt, and you need to be a big enough country that if people take your dollars, they know that, there's some intrinsic value because I can go to the United States and exchange this dollar for something produced in America. You can't do that with Switzerland. Switzerland's not big enough of a country. You can't do that in China, even though all the shit's produced in China and they have better economic fundamentals. They're corrupt as fuck. You don't know if you're going to get your fucking money back in China. So, I think we're going to continue printing off more money in the United States. We're going to keep rewarding the losers in the United States. We're going to keep, make work government programs for people with liberal arts degrees and women who get their masters. I'm an assistant reserve vice social kind of worker person, and I got a doctorate. We're going to limp along and basically make work jobs so people feel like they're employed. But it will be a slowdown, not a crash. We're just going to reward mediocrity. What would change that, though, is if all of a sudden Asia decided that, hey, we're going to really aggressively, like Korea did this. They're horrendously corrupt with their chaebols back in the 90s, looking up industrial magnates. Chaebols is what they call them. Debt was off the charts, and they just cracked down. And now Korea is not only, it's always been an aggressively growing country, but they're a lot less corrupt, and there's a lot more faith in the Korean won, or currency. If China were to do something similar, then that would force the United States. People say, why the fuck are we investing in fat, lazy American dollars when the Chinese cleaned up their fucking act, they're producing shit, and they have like a fraction of the debt that the United States have? So that could happen, but I think the corruption is so endemic and incorporated into Asian culture, it's not just China, that the productive capacity is there, the economic capacity is there, but it's not going to happen. But it could happen. And that would, if it happened quickly overnight, kind of like how Korea did, although Korea's tiny compared to China, that could lead to a crash. But I see it more of a slowly evolving. I think China, and they're improving. They will slowly improve. We'll slowly decay, but then again, a slowdown, not a crash. Another thing, cultural and demographic decay. This will come in two forms. One, immigrants from second and third world countries that have no fucking intention of becoming Americans functionally. They want to collect their welfare, they want to live off the government, they're going to vote in socialism, or they just want to blow places up and destroy the culture itself. And then Westerners themselves, you can pick on immigrants all you want, but a lot of them, I actually will respect them more, because they actually are aiming to do good. I think they come from cultures where it's just like, hey, free money, okay, and you can't blame them for that. That's just operating in your best interest. But the Westerners, it's just shit. It's just fucking shit. All these fucking sheep going on their fucking sports games, and I'm gonna get my degree, and these swipples and the social justice warriors. It is fucking shit. It's not like, oh, the United States and British people don't stink. They fucking stink to high heaven. These fucking Canadians, idiots, they're voting in the fucking trust fund baby of the year. And I know a lot of you are conservative, libertarian, you're hard workers, but not the majority in Canada, apparently. And you have to reflect, that is part of your country. So there is also a decay with the native population as well. Regardless, new people in, they're going to parasite off of the system. Old natives there that insist on parasiting off of the system. Again, it's not going to happen tomorrow, or you corrupt one person at a time through the public education system. But there will be, again, a general decline in work ethic, a general decline in skills. Everyone's majoring in the liberal arts. We're going to create more bullshit make-work jobs. Non-profits, nothing's actually going to get done. China's going to produce all the real shit. Slow down, but no collapse. Again, this gives rise to Asia. Anytime you guys want, you could dominate the world without firing a bullet. Seriously, you could dominate the world without firing a bullet. You just have to get rid of your corruption. And then they could dethrone the US dollar with the yuan, yen, maybe. The yuan itself, I think, could probably do it. So there you have that. Then another variable, again, this is evolving slowly, but it's not going to tank. Automation and roboticization. More and more jobs. I'm not naive. I know more and more jobs are being taken away because that's been the history of the world. Technology. We're not going to be Luddites. The history of economics has been using technology to eliminate shitty jobs that nobody wants to do. But they're starting to eliminate higher function and higher capacity jobs, and we'll see where artificial intelligence takes us. But this is a trend where it's going to, like, look, and I've written about it before, it's going to be two classes of people inevitably. And it's kind of like that already. A lot of this has already been happening all the time in history, so you got to look at it through a different prism. There's going to be an elite class of producers, engineers who keep the robots up and running, and then there's going to be what I call the service class, where you're basically paid for human interaction. Prostitution being one of them. You know, like, do you want to jerk off to porn, or do you actually want a whore? Well, people are going to pay for that. But then also, like, wait staff, you know. I go to McDonald's, I don't really need a waiter. I just want so a kiosk would be fine for me. But if you go to a higher end place, you're going to pay a premium to have that human touch. But that, you know, that involves a whole class of commoners, liberal arts majors, serving you your coffee, serving you your meals. They're not the ones developing the programs and over at Google or Silicon Valley. Much as we could pick on them, but it's true. Those are your elites. They're the ones that are actually programming and developing and advancing the economy. But I don't care how much education you have in the liberal arts, or even you could say maybe accounting, although I think there's some decisions. Chad Hawkins believes that accounting will not be going away anytime soon. Larger point is that this is going to take away jobs from the majority of people, because the majority of people are lazy fucks. They don't want to work hard. They don't want to become engineers or computer programmers. So again, it won't happen today or tomorrow. McDonald's just can't put millions of kiosks into their stores, but it will happen over slow down, not a collapse. Another one, men going GALT, or going MGTOW, however you want to call it. Again, men, whether you like it or not, ladies, men yourselves, we create civilization. We account for the majority of economic production. We account for the majority of innovation, creations, technological advances. Without us, it would just be caves. There would be no civilization without men. We account for the lion's share of economic growth, and predominantly through innovation and creation. Why? Because we want to have sex with women. We chase after female beauty. I'll say it again. It's not oil, it's not silver, it's not gold, it's not diamonds. The number one commodity in the world, and it always has been, it will continue to be, is young female beauty. Not old, not inner beauty, big tits, an ass that can back up into that, long legs, long hair, supple lips, good birthing hips. That's what we want, and that's the way it will be forever. That engine or incentive for engine of economic growth is being rapidly destroyed. Be it feminism, fat acceptance, divorce, government laws pertains to alimony and child support, and now men are slowly picking up on it. They've seen two generations of dads. Now it's first the baby boomers got slaughtered in divorce courts, and then Gen X is getting slaughtered. I thought we'd learn our lesson, we didn't. And Gen Z's watching like, fuck this. And men are dropping out. There is a marriage strike written by Helen Smith. Men are getting married later. A lot of men just aren't getting married at all. Fewer kids are being had, and a lot of guys are they're completely going GALT. You go on the extreme and you go MGTOW, and they're just not having anything to do with women. Sadly, men can get by on, what was it? Molyneux didn't ask, was it a 10th or a 20? Not a 10th. A 10th or a 5th. I think it was a 5th. A guy can get by on a 5th the resources as a woman or a child. And so with men going GALT, you see this especially pronounced in Japan, there's no economic growth. There's no hustle. There's no desire. And then you throw in substitute goods for women in the form of porn or, just a lack of fathers and a lack of testosterone in these young boys. Like, these millennial boys have less testosterone than their grandfathers, if you use grip strength. Holy shit. There's no, that's the fuel, that's the gas that keeps the economy going, is testosterone. And so, with any incentive destroyed, sexual beauty, female beauty being taken off the table, or there's such a cost associated with it, such a risk, men are just dropping out. They're just like saying, and say, hey, okay, look at all this government cheese and this, basic guaranteed income and all this other stuff you guys want from the roboticized economy. Now men have really no incentive. So there will still be men who pursue, look at these real nerds like, Zuckerberg or Bill Gates. Those guys were going to go and create it anyway because they had a passion for it. So I think there'll still be, it's man's intellectual interest to always go and try and research different things. That's not sexually driven, but the rank and file definitely are driven by sex. I mean, look at how men just piss away money on cars. Why do you think they do that? It's to get women. Even though it doesn't work, but, well, okay, it actually does. If you get into the really high end. But you take that away and these Gen Zers, these millennials go online, they don't. Well, look at the mini house thing. How's that for your fucking GDP and production, these little mini house? I think it's great. I think it's great when you minimalize. But again, this is not going to happen tomorrow. It's happening a little bit faster than you'd think. I mean, 3 generations and men and women aren't getting married no more. That's pretty fast. But again, it's a slow down, no crash. About the only thing that this is the last one, outside of like North Korea launching nukes, something obvious, I would say war in Europe or a collapse in Europe. And then there's financial contagion that spreads across the globe. And that would be prompted by the collapse of the euro due to the pigs or everyone Brexiting. But they amortize that. Like if Britain leaves, I think it's 2019. So it's not like today, bam, boom, oh my God, it collapses. They have to extricate themselves from each other methodically and according to rhyme and reason in a way that would not hurt the economy. But I think war in Europe due to how I would have thought democracies in Europe would accept Britain's exit. And they are proving themselves, some people, to be petty, tyrannical, dictatorial. Some people in the United Kingdom and Europe are like saying, well, we should ignore the vote of the British people. So you have that's war talk. Those are fighting words. I don't say that lightly. That's a reason to go kill people. You're going to tell me I have to stay part of this, even though according to the agreement we just had, that I could leave anytime I wanted? Well, someone's going to die. Someone needs to die because somebody thinks they have the right to other people's lives. So I would not put it past Brussels and some. Now again, it's out there. It's out there, but I would not put it past Brussels to say, like, you can't exit or not necessarily war, but a financial crisis coming from the disintegration of the euro. Where I do also see a potential for war is one of 2 places in Europe where I would not be surprised, I'm not putting a lot of faith in it, where war would be unleashed due to some kind of weird World War II machinations and odd politics due to countries wanting to leave the euro. Greece, God almighty, I could understand if Germany just wanted to go and beat the shit out of Greece, those parasites. I mean, you can see where, because Greece is just living off of everybody now. You can see where that might happen because it's nothing more than theft. So something like that, I can't put it, not like Brussels is going to raise an army because they're Europe, they don't have an army. But some would happen where there'd be enough tit for tat, or the Germans would get sick and tired of bailing out the Greeks. There'd be enough parasites. There'd be enough to bring the economy to a halt. Oh, wait, in Europe, you're not growing anyway. Maybe not war, but it would heighten it. DEFCON 3, maybe. I don't know, whatever the DEFCONs are. So there's something in that kind of gray, amorphous area that would happen. The other thing I see is, and this is more likely, would be a war due to immigration. Either due to the euro getting pissed off that countries like Poland and Hungary dare to be countries, and they will decide what happens in their borders, and you people in Brussels can go fuck each other with a stick. Or you have civil wars where enough Muslims are blowing up shit that the locals have enough, and then they attack Muslims, and then the government comes in and starts attacking their own people. And if that happens, you have essentially a civil war, not a Euro war like where the European Union attacks people for daring not, to let who they do and do not want into their own countries. But you have within the UK, within Germany, within Italy, where the locals will rise up. They've had enough. They'll actually start asserting their authority and their sovereignty. And then I don't think they'll win. I think you will have Italian army shooting Italian citizens. I think you'll have British soldiers shooting British citizens. And that will just, right there, there's your collapse. There's your financial crisis. Because if you have a civil war going on within even one of the countries in the European Union, or not the, okay, Britain's out, but within Europe, that might spread, that might prompt sympathy wars or sympathy attacks. And then you got World War III over again, and then the United States be like, I don't know, do we really help these assholes out this time? Hey, China, how you doing? Yeah, let's go hang out. Let's chill. Putin, baby, you're still press? All right. No, let's just sit here and smoke a cigar. I don't give a shit anymore. We're not doing this again. Anyway, so I don't know where it's going to come from. The only one on this list that isn't like slow down but no crash is war in Europe. And anything could, somebody over at Goldman Sachs could enter a trade wrong, and then you got a crash like 1987, and that sends when the derivatives market takes, shits the bed, and now you got real problems. But some that is somewhat predictable in the world of socioeconomics and finance, I would say economic, political, or even war strife in Europe, maybe in our lifetimes. But right now, there's just too many damn central banks and too much damn corruption in the world that it kind of forces stability, at least upon the United States with our world reserve currency. And I don't, like I said, I think financial markets are completely removed from economic reality now. You'd have to have some kind of financial crash price would have to go down, that it threatens an entire sector of our economy, typically the financial part of the economy. But like I said before, I think government would bail them out. They're used to that now. Capital ratios are a little bit better. There's other things, regulation that are put in place. I just don't see, and that doesn't mean it won't happen, I just don't see crashes. I see a malaise. I see a general decaying into a pile of shit, but I don't see a crash. About the only place that I could see a spark happening would be war, or something to do with immigration or sovereignty or the collapse of the euro over in Europe. That's it. But otherwise, yeah, I just don't. There's nothing on my horizons that I see. But I have no faith in the future, if that makes any sense. So that's it. All right, silence so long. If you guys got questions, go to assholeconsulting.com. The world's oldest brother, older brother, America's older brother, the world's only professional asshole. We'll answer it for a fee. And that's it. We'll see you guys later. Toodles.